Hi, I know I promised you this time we were going to be checking out the ASCII codes, but I decided instead to make a game using what we've mostly already learned, but throwing in a few more tricks. First, I've already written the game, but and I'm going to show you how it works. If you see it ahead of time, that might give you a better idea of what is what's happening while we're programming it. So let's play the game. And I don't know if you can read this or how well you can read it, but it says, I will pick a random number between 1 and 100. You try and guess it. I will give you hints. Cold if you're not close, or hot if you are close. Good luck. Your guess. So I'm going to start off with 20. 20 is very hot and getting warmer, which doesn't mean much yet because the last was the 0. So 20 is very hot. So let's try 25. It's also very hot and getting warmer, which means we're even closer. So I'm going to try 23 and getting warmer. How about 24? Yes. Woo! You won in just 4 tries. Congratulations. Press any key to continue. So I'm going to do it one more time. Gives you the same message. I will pick a random number between 1 and 100, etc. So your guess. We're going to start off with 80. 80 is cold. How about 50? It's very hot. So let's go 55. Hot but getting colder, which means 50 was closer. 50 was closer. So let's go 45. That's very hot. So I'm thinking between 45 and 50. 47 is my guess. Very hot and getting warmer. So getting warmer from 45, so that means it's higher than 47. We'll go 48. Oh, but getting colder. So how about between 45 and 46? Yes, 46 in just 7 tries. All right, so that's the game. You go ahead and get to a new blank project, and I have to, first of all, exit out of here. Go into here. Guess my number project is what I called it. I'm going to delete it. Delete the whole folder. And restart my project, a new blank project. So on the left, new project. Empty project, and we're going to call it guess my number, and okay. Just waiting for, here we go. Maybe. There we go. Make that full screen. And add in a new blank C++ file that we rename to main.cpp. All right. As always, at the beginning of every project, we're going to include some header files, as always on the console ones, IOStream. We're also going to need to use the string object. Now here's one you haven't seen before. It's CSTD. Oops, forgot that. CSTD-LIB. It stands for C Standard Library. And another one you haven't seen before is time.h. And lastly, one that we wrote, so it goes, this one goes in double quotes, and it should be one directory above where we're writing this. So we're going to write .. and it is called input, either input validation or input verification. .h. Then of course there's our standard using name space std semicolon. And then we start our main function, int main, open and close the parentheses for the function, open some curly braces. And I always put my variables, except for like looping variables, I'll always put those at the top. So we're going to have an integer called my number. That's the number that the PC is going to be hiding from you. We're going to set it initially to be 0. Then we have another integer called the user guess, also set to 0. Now, of course, when we now that my number, that's going to be the random number between 100 and 100, between 1 and 100 that the computer's holding. Then, of course, there's your guess as the the person using it's guess. We want to know the difference between those two numbers. That way we can tell them if they're hot or cold or not. So difference, I'll set that one equal to 0. Now you also noticed it said but getting warmer or getting colder. That's because we measure the difference on this guess from the difference on the guess before it. So if you moved further away from the number, that difference will be higher. So we need to record what the last difference was. So we're going to say last guess difference. This one we are going to set to 100. The reason is that when it's 0, that means the difference between the last one and this one is 0. And it always came out on your first guess and said colder. So if we set it to 100, that means it always comes out on the first one and says getting warmer, which just seems to make a little bit more sense. Now, to calculate the difference, we need to know which number, because we always want difference to be a positive number. We don't want it to go into the negatives, but we don't know. Say the computer's guess is 20, and the person guesses 50. Well, 20 minus 50 would be a negative 30. We could do that by absolute value, but I'm just going to show a different way of doing it here. So we're going to create two variables called max equals 0 and min, and notice I used a comma between these two, and min equals 0. That's because they're both integers, so you can put them on the same line. And because I normally put them all on their own line unless they have like a similar purpose, which these two do. So I'm just putting them on the same line. Now it also at the end it tells you guessed it in a certain number of guesses. Like I think I had 7 guesses on there. So you need a counter to do that. So we're gonna say integer counter equals 0. And of course we have those strings that are like if you're hot or getting warmer, things like that. So string temp, and we're going to just put that in empty double quotes for now. That's going to be the one that says if you're cold or very hot. Then we also have string delta temp. That's the one getting warmer or getting colder. Delta in math is generally means a change of. So this is a change of temperature. So getting warmer, getting colder. And we're going to also put that in empty double quotes. So that's all we need for our variables. Now, on here, to pick a random number, we need a random number generator. And that is, a function is already pre-made, and we included the file, the C standard library. So one thing you always need to do when you're using a random number generator is to seed the generator. And they provide a function to do that. It's srand, and you just really have to put a number into that function, pass it a number. Most people just pass the time to that function because the time is basically it's a fractional number that that includes the year, month, day, hour, minutes, seconds, down to like milliseconds. So it's a pretty big number, and of course it changes by the millisecond. So we're going to put in another function that just calls and gets the system time. And to call that function, you write in those parentheses time, and you're going to pass it null, and that's all in caps, NULL. Then of course there's 2 closes to parentheses there. Now I've seen where people have, every time they go to get a random number, they seed the random number generator. You don't need to do that. You just need to call it once in your program, and then it will produce random numbers all the time. In fact, you're more likely if you continually seed it to get more similar numbers. So you just want to call it once, and then you'll get good random numbers. All right, so now what we want to do is print the header, the directions up onto the screen. So we're going to go cout, and I'm going to write, let's see, I will pick a random number between 1 and 100. And line cout. You try to guess it. I will give you hints. End line cout. And then in all caps we write code. If you're not close or hot dot in all caps if you're getting closer. End line, cout. Good luck! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. And just to make it look pretty, put a couple of end lines in there. All right, so that's the directions on the top of the screen. Now, now we want to guess a random number. So we're going to say my number equals, and the function that you call, again included in that C standard library, is rand. And you don't have to include anything in the parentheses on there, but what you do want to do is at the end put the percent symbol and then write 100 plus 1. Now, what that does is it will produce a random number between 1 and 100. Now, while we're debugging this, we're going to want to know what that number is so we can see if we're on the right track or not. So what I'm going to do is write my number equals 50. And then we're going to comment out the random number generator. That way there later on when we come back, when we really want to run it for real, we can just take out those comments and take out this line, and we'll be ready to go. But like I said, while we're debugging, we're going to want to see if we're going to want to know what the number is. All right, now obviously they're not going to get it on the first try. Well, hopefully they won't. But so what we're going to do is we're going to start a while true loop, and that will continually run until they guess the right number. So first off, we want to increment our counter. That tells us how many loops, how many times they've gone through the loops. And remember, the increment operator is a plus plus. So counter plus plus. And now we want to get a number from the user. So we're going to say user guess equals, and we're going to use a function that we created from input validation called get number, and we're going to prompt them with your guess. Put a couple of empty spaces at the end so it doesn't show right up on top of it. So now we've got the user guess. We have the computer has its number. Now we need to determine which one is greater than or less than, or if their number is, actually what the difference is. But to do that, we want to figure out which one is higher or lower than the other. So we have that variable max. We're going to set that to equal the computer's guess, my number. Then we're going to put in a statement saying if the user guess is greater than max, then max will equal user guess. Now remember, if you're not using, if you're not going to have multiple lines of code to run on the if statement, you don't need the brackets. And while you could have this underneath like this, I sometimes just prefer to have it right on the same line. It makes it a little easier to read. And we're going to do the same thing with min. We're going to assume min equals my number and check. And we're going to say if user guess this time is less than min, then min equals the user guess. So now min and max equal the two higher numbers. I missed a line here. You know what? Before we go checking to see which one's greater than or less than, we should actually check to see if they're equal. So we're going to say if user guess is equal to user guess is equal to, and remember that's a double equal signs, my number, then we're going to break. That will break us out of the while loop because they've now guessed the correct number. All right, so going back down here, we have max is the higher number, min is the lower number. So we just need to calculate the difference. We're going to say difference is equal to max minus min. Now, like I said, you could have done that whole thing by just doing an absolute value, do a subtraction, and then do a function to calculate the absolute value so you don't get negative. But yeah, I don't know why I did it this way, but this is just a way. It's called a short circuit. Just assume something is there, and then change it if that was wrong. And this works just as well. So now we know the difference between the two numbers, and what we have to do is determine which string we're going to give them based on how much that difference is. So we're going to say temp equals very hot. And now we're going to change it again, kind of short circuiting it, assuming they're very hot. We're going to short circuit it and say if the difference is greater than 5, then temp is going to equal hot. If difference is greater than 15, then temp will equal warm. If difference is greater than 25, then temp will equal cold. Oops. I wrote will instead of put an equal sign. If the difference is greater than, say, 40, then temp will equal very cold. All right, so what we did here is we started off with temp equaling very hot, and then we assume, then we start going through these if statements. Now remember, very hot, it means that you're very close. So you start off assuming very close, but if the difference is actually greater than 5, then you're going to change it to hot. If the difference is greater than 15, you're going to change it to warm. So really, this is how it boils down as this is continually going through the loop. When you first start off, You could be anywhere between up to a maximum of very cold, which means that you end up changing this string, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. But you're very cold, so each time you do it, you should be cutting down how many times you have to change that string. You could have written this something like if difference is greater than 25 and difference is less than 40, then temp equals cold. You could have written something like that. But now you're doing two comparisons to decide if you're going to change it. And that ends up actually taking longer than just going ahead and changing it. And even if you have to change it a bunch of times. But you do want to try to make it, they're aiming for very hot. So they're going to be trying to stay away from this very cold. So as soon as they realize very cold, they're going to be moving to an area where they start getting into the warm or hot or very hot area. And then they're going to spend most of their time in that spot. So always try to go on what the goal is. Let me get rid of that line. All right, so now we have that hint for them. And the other hint we have is if they are getting warmer or getting colder. And remember, we have the variable that says last guess difference that's set to 100. So we're going to see which one is closer. So it's going to go, we're going to go if difference is greater than last guess difference, last guess diff, then we change that delta temp to equal, put in a leading space, but getting colder, period, space, close, else, that's because the difference was greater there, so you went the wrong way. So otherwise, delta temp is going to equal leading space and getting warmer. All right. Now we just have to publish the results to the user. So we're going to write cout what they guessed, user guess, and leading space is and the temp and the delta temp. And then we want to just put in a couple of spaces, because at the end of this, it's really going to go back up to the top and prompt them again. So you don't want it right on top. Just put a couple of spaces in there for formatting. All right, so we've just published the results to them, and now we're going to say we need to set that last guess difference to what the difference was here. So difference. And that loop will continue to run over and over again until the user guess does equal the computer number, where it will break. Now, once it breaks, we're going to be outside of this loop. We're going to write cout inlined, oops, inlined, end line. That's just for formatting. Make it look a little neater on the screen. See out. And all caps. Woo. Exclamation point, exclamation, exclamation. A few spaces. You won. Close the quotes. And oops, can't do it in caps. End line. See out. Right. In just space. Counter. Leading space tries. End line. See out. And in all caps. Congratulations. And then see out again. This is really now, that's the end of the game. Now we're just going to do our closing bit. So we're going to say, we're going to see out a few end lines. This is again just to make it look a little neater on the screen. I put 4 of them in there. Then we put system, and in parentheses, pause. That's where the system stops. It puts out that press any key to continue. And once they press a key, we're going to return 0 and end the program. So that's it. Now we're going to go in and make sure that the program actually works. And remember, we have the random number generator shut off, and we're using just the number 50. So let's click run. It's going to take a minute to compile here. Here we go. So we know it's 50, so we're going to type in 10. 10 is cold and getting warmer. Your guess. And we're going to go 20. 20 is cold and getting warmer. So we're getting closer. So let's back up a little bit now. It should say is cold and getting colder. So we'll put in a 15. 15 is cold but getting colder. Your guess. 40. 40 is hot and getting warmer. Your guess. 53. 53 is very hot and getting warmer. And then, so we've seen basically all the variables there. So now we'll just type in a 50 and end the game. Woo, you won in just 6 tries. Congratulations. Press any key to continue. All right, so that's it. It works as expected. Now we're going to take out the comments for this random number generator and comment out the my number equals 50, and we'll do it again. This time we don't really know the number, so I'm going to start off with 25. It's warm. How about 50? It's hot. So going in the right direction. How about 60? Warm. About 40. Very hot. So we know we're pretty close. We'll go 42. Yes, I won in just 5 tries. All right, that's it. Now you could have a little fun with this. Maybe maybe you can make this up to 100, or I mean up to 1,000. So you can change this random number generator up to 1,000 by Just adding in that 0. Then, of course, you have to change these numbers down here to kind of give you a better idea. Otherwise, you're going to be nearly off all the time. So change those numbers to something where, kind of how far you want it to be between hot, very hot, and things like that. And have fun with it. All right, I'll see you next time. And we'll really do the ASCII thing then.